Oh, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And in this episode, we're not going to be doing any sort of like typical gameplay. If you guys are familiar with the channel, you know that we just finished The Last of Us Part 2. And I just wanted to take a moment to, I guess, do somewhat of a roundtable discussion. And I'm hoping that I can do these at the end of every series, kind of a podcast style discussion. I'm, seeing as how this is the first one, I'm going to try to probably keep it brief or as brief as I can. And I'm hoping to be able to elaborate on these episodes later on. And like I said, they'll typically be at the end of a series. So there's something to look forward to at the end. And they're kind of just a roundtable, open discussion. Hopefully you guys will be posing questions, but seeing as how my channel's, relatively small right now, there are no questions to be asked. But I was hoping that I could take this opportunity to pose some questions to you guys and give my opinions. And maybe as you guys find the channel, if you're new, you can engage with some of those questions down in the comment section below. So if you guys do enjoy this content, be sure to smack that like button, subscribe if you're new here, as it very much helps out the channel, makes me happy, and we'd love to have you. But without further ado, let's get into the conversation. And for that specifically, I don't even know where to begin. The Last of Us 2. If you guys watch the channel, you watch the series, you went along with me on this journey. I'm sure you guys know very much that I'm kind of speechless for this game. There's a number of things that I enjoyed about it very much, and a number of things that I absolutely hated, just straight up, absolutely hated it. But overall, I enjoyed the game. So I want that to come across that, overall, my experience with the game was very positive. There are just some things that I just wish that they had done differently. But I don't want this to be a ranting piece about me just hating on the game. As I'm sure you guys can scour the internet pretty quickly and find just about everybody hating on the game for one reason or another. Like, I don't hate the game, I wish that they had done things differently, but I see what they were going for, and, it was a risk. Let's just say that. It was a risk. It's something that you don't see in too many games these days. Whether people like it or hate it is kind of 50-50 at this point. I see some people who love it, some people absolutely despise it. And, when I first finished the game, I was immediately going to jump in and do this video. But I've waited about a few days. I think I waited about a week since I played it and really just thought about all of the things that happened from start to finish, the various different stories going from young Ellie to young Abby to old Ellie to old Abby. I really tried to put all these pieces together, see what they were trying to do before I made my opinion. Because after I finished the game, I put my headset down, I stepped away from my desk, and I was like, I don't know how to feel about that. I honestly don't know how to feel about that. It was, I want to say it was good. I want to feel positive about it, but the game just left me so depressed. I was like, geez, this is just like, it was just so sad. So that's why I had to take a few days and get my thoughts together, to create a more cohesive, well-rounded analysis or final thoughts video for you guys. So like I said before, if you guys agree with some of the points that I've made, hit the comment section, because I'd love to hear what you guys think. And if you guys disagree, I really want to hear what you guys think, because let's be honest, like, there's anybody I've talked to about this game, whether it was a specific scene or we were talking about the overall message of the game or the overall story, like, everybody's had a difference of opinion. And I think that's, for me at least, where the game shines, is not so much in the story itself, not so much in any of that. It's the discussion that a game can invoke out of people. Like, you don't get that too many times. Like, in a game, you'll typically get a good guy and you get a bad guy, right? And you're like, oh, what did you think of that bad guy? Oh, he was a good villain, or he was a bad villain. Or what did you think of the story? Oh, it was good, But so many stories, I guess now when you look at a game like this, so many stories are so vanilla, it's just like, oh, this is a thing. This is a good guy. He goes into the bad guy and he kills the bad guy or whatever. And that's typically the end of it. But in this game, there were so many layers to it. There were so many, like, at the end of the game, it was hard for me, and I can only speak of myself, I'm not going to say like this is what everybody thought, but this is just what I thought, how I interpreted it. I interpreted it as like, I didn't know who the bad guy was. I didn't know who the good guy was, because you look at these two girls, they had both done bad things. But you look at their motives behind it, which is why I think they give you these flashbacks, and both of their motives were from a good place of wanting justice for people that they cared about. So when you look at it at a very surface level, you're like, okay, I can see why Abby did what she did. I can see why Ellie did what she did. But we'll get into more in depth about stuff I guess the more nitty gritty of the characters themselves. But let's just start off with something very basic. Let's start off with gameplay, right? What did you guys think of the game? Like, what did you think about how it played? How did you feel about the overall gameplay itself, the environments, the feeling, of the game? I'll speak for myself and say that, like, I like the gameplay. At first, I'll be honest with you guys. At first, when I saw E3 and I saw them, first reveal The Last of Us Part 2, and they said that you were going to be playing as Ellie, I wasn't exactly sure how to feel about that. I really wasn't. I was like, well, I guess that could be good. Yeah, it could be good. Playing as Ellie, we got to play her for like a split second, in The Last of Us Part 1. And then you play as her at the very end of it as well. But, I was like, okay, well, we'll see. As long as my man Joel is there, maybe they like switch roles. You're playing as Ellie and Joel's following behind her or something like that. But I wasn't sure how to feel. But then when I got to play as her, I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Playing as a grown up Ellie, because you kind of, in a way, feel like you grew up with this character. You feel like you've evolved with her throughout the years. You're curious to see what she's been up to, what her life has what her life has been like, given the fact that she didn't die in that hospital. So, with that, I thought that was pretty cool. And if we're talking about simple mechanics, like I actually liked the way that she played as better than I liked Joel. Like, I thought Joel was a pretty cool character to play as. It felt good to play as him. But when I was playing as Ellie, and you get the ability to, like, you can dodge enemies' attacks and stuff, I was juking fools out left and right. I got to tell you guys, like, I was out here making some pretty slick moves, and I felt good about it. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, and the way that she's, what I liked about her most is that she's scrappy, and they kept that intact. Like, you could see that as you're playing as Joel in The Last of Us 1, that, Ellie, she could kind of she had quick maneuverability. She could move, and that was kind of cool. So to be able to play as her and they still like represent her well, like she's not this stiff player, like she's a scrappy, movable, like pretty lightweight, character. So I like that. I thought that was pretty cool. In terms of other aspects of the game, like the weapons and stuff like that, I love how they brought all the weapons back. They brought the Molotovs back, one of my favorites from The Last of Us 1. They brought the bow back. And I was hyped about the bow. Like, when we got the bow in Last of Us Part 2, I was like, finally, because it was just one of my favorite weapons to use back in Last of Us 1. So, of course they brought the shotgun back. They brought, the pistol. She used Joel's revolver and things like that. And I thought that was pretty cool. So overall, the game played great. Like, I loved moving around through the areas. I thought it was great. Now, if we move on from there to the environments, like, I thought the Seattle area, so well represented. If you guys have ever been to Seattle, I think the most detailed part was the raining. It's always freaking raining there. But when it's not, like, it's a pretty beautiful city. Even when it is raining, it's beautiful. So if you guys have never been to Seattle, I highly recommend it. But I absolutely loved just how well they scaled the city. Like, the buildings were huge. Even the fact that they were torn down was still so well depicted. Like, it was able, like I said, if you've ever been to Seattle, it's almost that much more immersive, because you're like, wow, I know where we are. We're on the 5 highway. Like, holy crap, like, that's freaking cool. And it's all torn down and stuff. Like, it just brought so many pieces of my imagination, like, to life, like the way that they, illustrated this city so well. Even when we get to the Ferris wheel later on, I was like, holy smokes, like I've been in this Ferris wheel. I've seen it. I've seen the aquarium. Like I was like, this is pretty legit. So often we get so consumed with like the game itself and doing things and looking for things that you kind of forget to step back, look at the environment and be like, man, I can see why this took them, 7+ years to make this game. Just so much detail went into it. And that's pretty cool. And then when you go to Santa Barbara later on in the game, I was like, man, this is freaking awesome. Like Santa Barbara is so well represented, just with like the mission style, like architecture and the palm trees, of course, just the ocean and the mountains and everything, like really well done. So overall, I love the environments. And I hope you guys don't think I'm like going off the cuff here or rambling too much. I didn't really make a script for this. Simply because, it's first time at it. Like I just wanted to get a feel for how, if I want to continue doing things. So like I said, guys, let me know, show me some love, hit that like button if you guys do enjoy. And let me know in the comments if there's anything you want me to change. You'd want the face cam for these things, stuff like that. But anyway, so we're going through gameplay. We've gone through the environments. Let's talk about, let's talk about the story. Holy smokes, guys. I don't know where to begin. I have spent the past couple of days trying to think of the story, think of what they were trying to do, because it's so easy to forget about what the developers were trying to do and what we actually want, and sometimes that can create some dissonance of be like, well, this is terrible because you didn't do how I would have imagined you to do it. Like it was so easy. And in many ways, you guys are right. In many ways, you're absolutely right. It seems like a very easy thing to do, to go about a very just basic cookie cutter story. But as you can see, they took a significant risk with this story and talking about and incorporating some elements that you just typically don't see in games, like at all. Now we'll do a good and a bad and a just complete like WTF, and that's a completely like, why did you decide to go this way? But we'll start with the good. I want to be positive. I don't want to be ranting about all the things I hated, because there's quite a few, but I want to talk about the things that I really did like. And one thing that I did like about the game was just the amount of detail, not just in the environments and not just in the gameplay, but in the story and in Ellie's growth throughout, the flashbacks up until the time that you're playing as her. The game does such a good job at making you feel what these characters are feeling. And if you guys think back to certain scenes, you think back to, certain areas of the game, like I was legit shaking in certain areas. I was like, holy crap, like I have no idea what's about to happen. I had certain parts where like, doing the flashbacks and going to the museum with Joel, or going to the aquarium as Abby, like I felt true, like relief. I was like, oh man, because like in most of the game, like you're in just such dire straits and you have to worry about life and death and like all these different areas. But like when you get these flashbacks, man, I tell you guys, like you really feel like you kind of feel happy. You're like, oh, this is so cool to go back and see her, especially in Abby's case, see her have these like father-daughter engagements with Joel and have her have these moments that you really didn't get in the first game. Like you had brief moments of this, but they were still masked behind the concept of like life or death, or like, yeah, this is cool, we have this little moment, but like we got to keep on our guard because people are gonna trying to kill us. But in The Last of Us 2, as you go through these flashbacks, you really feel like, man, you kind of feel a sense of safety and security, and you don't want these flashbacks to end. And I don't know, I absolutely love that. That was my favorite part, I'd have to say, of the entire game, were the flashbacks. Not only because they give you a sense of security, a sense of safety, but they make you feel kind of like they kind of flesh out the characters a little bit more. Like, especially for Ellie, like I really felt like I was understanding where she was coming from, because what you see, especially when Joel dies, like you just feel anger, but you feel anger possibly for yourself and what Joel meant to you as a player. But as you go through these flashbacks and you see Ellie have these little moments with Joel, you kind of get the feeling that you feel even more pain. You feel even more distress and more anger for what has happened to her because of all the special moments that she has had that she didn't that us as players, we didn't even know about. You know, like you didn't even know that she went to that Joel showed her these things, that he gave her this experience of feeling like she was, flying off into space. You didn't even have the heartbreaking moment where, Joel tells her what he actually did and how he chose to save her that day. Like, and you didn't feel the pain of that. Like all of this pain you feel is internalized in Ellie. And it makes what she's doing that much harder to watch, that much harder to play through, and in many ways, just that much harder to experience. But at the same time, if you look past that, I really liked that. I liked how there was such a focus on those flashbacks and on those memories that were so special to Ellie. So that was one of the things I liked. There might be some other things that I may bring up, but that was, for me, if I had to choose one thing, that was the number one thing. Now, moving on to the things that I didn't like, and I'll try to be brief on this. I don't want to dwell too much on what, I didn't like because, the game's already been made. There's not much we can do to change it. But I would love to pose a discussion after I say the things that I didn't like. I'd love to pose a discussion with you guys where, jump in the comments and let me know what you guys would have wanted to see. Like, I'd love a brief script of like what you imagined, all these years waiting for The Last of Us Part 2, what you imagined the game to be like. And I'll give you mine as well. But starting off with the bad, let's see. What did I not like? Oh, I know. I didn't like how they killed Joel. And I'm hoping at least that a lot of you can agree with me on this one. I didn't like it. I absolutely hated the fact that they killed my guy, Joel. And although I understand why they went about it this way and why, this isn't the first time we've seen one of the main characters die. It's not the last time we'll see a main character in a video game die, especially a character that we care about so much. But in a way, I almost wonder, I don't even know what to think. But I'll tell you straight up, I didn't like it. Especially, now here's the thing. If they had killed Joel, at the end of the game, or even halfway through the game, where we still got to experience, playing the game with him a little bit, I still would have been mad. I don't want that to be misconstrued. I still would have been mad, but I would have been a little bit more lenient on them. If he, died halfway, like I said, halfway or through the end of the game in some heroic feat to save Ellie or whatever, I would have been like, damn, that sucks. But it's fine. But the way that they killed my man in the first, 30 minutes of the game, and the way that they killed him, I think they highly underestimated just how much of an impact and how much of a beloved character Joel has been to people who have played The Last of Us. I think they highly underestimated that, because I understand what they were trying to do and get us to feel this emotional connection and have this emotional response that is very much similar to Ellie. It's kind of very much immersing you. It's almost like VR in a way. You are so immersed in that scene when you're playing as Ellie and she gets, pinned down, helpless, without any way to help Joel, who has just been beaten half to death. You kind of feel that, at least for me, as I'm playing that scene. And I'm seeing Joel and he's on the ground. I'm like, I would be so angry. I'd be so angry, trying so hard to get up, just like Ellie was, to save this person that I love so much. And I think, in a way, that's what they were trying to get us to see. But at the same time, man, I think they grossly underestimated just how much of an impact Joel was going to have on the community as a whole. And as a result, nothing after that game, nothing after that moment in the game changed my opinion of Abby. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And at first, at first I was comfortable there. I was comfortable there. I felt at home in this sense of just absolute hatred for this character. And I was like, I hope she dies. I hope she gets bitten. I hope she gets mauled by a pack of clickers. I don't care what happens to this girl. And although as the game progressed, I did start to feel a little bit more empathy for Abby and kind of where she came from, I still didn't feel like it warranted that level of just gross beating, especially of a character that we love so much. Now, understandably, if Homegirl had gone and killed Joel just like that, right, I would have been like, damn, that's messed up. We got to do something about this girl. But just the way that she just straight up dogged him, she just straight beat this man. I don't know about you guys, but it didn't sit well with me. It didn't sit well with me at all. Because here's the thing, and I want to pose this situation for you guys. It's not like Joel was, you know, some other, think of any villain from another game that you played, a villain that you hated, right? And that villain 9 times out of 10 was probably a guy that was already bad, or a character that was already bad, male, female, whatever. He was probably a character that was already a villain, maybe some drug lord, maybe some big criminal mastermind, whatever. And he was already bad, and he was out here destroying lives all over, killing people, whatever. You felt justified in going after him and killing him, right? What's Abby's excuse? Well, like, really, what is her excuse? She killed Joel like you just killed somebody who stole something from you. And now maybe people want to argue and say, oh, well, he stole her childhood. Okay, Abby was already probably like 13, 14 years old back when this situation happened. And it's not like Joel straight up killed her father the way she killed him in front of her. Now, if he had done that back in Last of Us 1, and she had found him and did the same thing to him, I'd call that poetic justice. I'd be like, you know what? Hey, what comes around goes around, Joel. I'm sorry, man, but you didn't have to kill her dad like that. But all she did was shoot him. In fact, we are the ones who shoot him. So you kind of feel a little bit for why she's so upset. But how many years has this been? How many years has it been since we made that decision? 5 years? 6 years? 4 years? You know, like, to hold on to that level of anger that long. And when you finally find Joel, actually, you don't even find him. He finds you. And you just straight up kill him like that after busting his kneecap with a shotty. I just feel like a lot of that was just overly done. Like, it didn't need to be done that way. Like, if she had killed him, like I said, people would have still been mad. But it would have been like, all right, you know, fine. But I think what upset so many people is just the way that she beat him. The way that she killed him. Almost humiliating him in front of this group. And, you know, it made it very hard for me to feel any sort of justification in that. You know, like I said, you know, if we want to take ourselves out of it objectively, we see that she killed the Firefly, or he killed the Fireflies, and he maybe killed some of these guys who's in the room. Maybe he killed some of their friends, maybe killed some of their family who was in this facility, you know, people who are all Fireflies, you know, and you can kind of see, all right, that might make some people pretty mad, right? But does it still warrant him just being killed like that? And everybody in the room just kind of stands around and watches as this man who's bleeding on the ground, begging for his life, or you know, being beaten with a golf club? Like, did he really deserve that kind of just utter torment? I don't think so. You guys let me know in the comments. I don't think he deserved that. So I think that's what made a lot of people mad. And for me, that's one of the major things that I did not like about the game. Was I didn't like how we had to see that. I didn't like how we had to feel that. And I know that that's a part of life and things like that. You know, people die and we're helpless to do anything to stop it. I get the overall message of that, but damn, they straight up killed my man. And I'm sorry, I couldn't let it go. A long way throughout the game, I felt with Ellie. I was like, you know what? Hey, go get him, Ellie. Go get them. I'd kill them all too. If that's how they're gonna do somebody that you loved so heavily, and like you're begging them to stop, and like, and here's the thing, guys. Abby never tells Joel why she's doing this. You know, like, had she just taken 5 seconds to be like, you killed my father, put a little Luke Skywalker on him, you know. Or, you know, I am your father. Like, okay, that would be a plot twist. I'd be like, wow, okay. I didn't know. You know, you might feel for Abby a little bit more, but she never openly expresses like, hey, Joel, you killed my father, so I'm going to get revenge. Oh, okay, cool. But you as a player go through much of the game and you find out later that he killed her father, but she still never tells him. So Joel still never knows that, like, that's why they killed that's why they killed him. And in addition to that, she never explains it. And, you know, as the player, you're left to just assume that the reason that she killed him, or that he kind of knew why they were after him, he kind of knew that it had to do with the Fireflies or something like that, right? But you still don't know. I don't know. I feel like that is what, in any way, is owed to the player, just this feeling of just, you know, this feeling of closure where you're like, okay, well, at least we as the player know, at least we know that Joel knew why he was killed, but he doesn't even have any idea. You know? And so that's one thing that I didn't like. Like I said, I didn't like the way they killed him, and I didn't like how she never expresses it to him why she's doing what she's doing. So, in addition to that, you see the after effect that it has on Ellie. And Ellie has a number of, you know, encounters with Abby throughout the game. Or I think 2, or, you know, maybe 3 to be specific. And in the later areas where you fight her in the theater and then you fight her later on, I kept hoping that they would have a discussion, at least a brief discussion. They didn't need to sit down and have coffee and talk about their grievances against each other, but I would have liked, as a player, for them to at least have a small moment where she expresses what Joel meant to her. Oh, that was my father figure, you know, and her and Abby be like, oh, well, he killed my father, so that they could have this moment of understanding. Because I feel like that's where the bridge to forgiveness begins to be built, is upon a mutual understanding of each other's actions. If we can't understand each other's actions, we can't understand why someone wrongs us, then how can we go to forgive? Like, I mean, you can just choose to let it go. But I feel like it would have been a lot more beneficial for these characters to have understood why each other did things. Because throughout the game, there's so many parallels of characters dying and those characters having similar relationships to the main girls, Abby and Ellie. You know, in the manners that they die happen similarly. And through all of these things, like you kind of feel like, oh, you kind of feel like you're being painted a picture, you know? Oh, these are the same people. They're the same person. And you're like, wow, that's kind of cool. But you hope that throughout the game, at some point, they're going to have this moment of mutual understanding for each other that allows the two characters to see eye to eye, so that forgiveness could be formed. But instead, you get to the end of the game, you know what I mean? And like, there's never this moment. Like, Ellie just chooses to let it go and let her go, and which kind of upset me too. You know, it upset me because she went all this way, got injured again, left everything behind, left her loved one, her child behind, for this vendetta that she couldn't just let go. Finally gets to the girl and does nothing. She fights her, says, I'm going to fight you, and just lets her go at the end. And for me as a player, that was extremely heartbreaking to watch because, you know, of the bond that we have with Ellie. You don't want to see her make these bad choices. And all throughout the game, you just see her just getting darker and darker and darker. And maybe that's where the song comes in that Joel teaches her. You know, if ever I were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. And you kind of see that's this deteriorating mental state of Ellie, or her deteriorating emotional state, where she just cannot seem to find happiness. Even after, you know, they have that fight in the auditorium or the theater, they go off and live their life with, you know, Ellie and Dina. Ellie still can't find happiness because she's completely lost. She's lost without this person that means so much to her, even if she, you know, kind of hated him and whatever. And, you know, you kind of see that throughout the game, and it's hard to watch. And, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of areas where I felt like they could have just done things slightly differently. You know, having a small discussion between the two main characters as to why they were going about doing what they were doing. That would have just given us, at least as the player, a feeling of understanding where like we know that these both these characters know why they're doing what they're doing, and if they still choose to go that route, then so be it, you know, so be it. If after they have a discussion with each other and they still just choose to chase after this vengeance that they have so heavily like found themselves cradled beneath, then I'd be like, all right, you know, you got to do what you got to do, right? But as the player, you see these two characters and they're both trying to kill each other, and, you know, or Ellie's trying to kill all of her friends or whatever to get to Abby. Abby finds the after effects of Ellie's actions and goes and tries to kill Ellie. And it's like, okay, but you're not going to ask why? Why did you do it? Why did you do it? Instead, all Abby says is, we let you live and you wasted it. Me as a player, I felt a little peeved by that. I was like, oh, excuse me. I didn't know you gave me the opportunity to have a second chance of life. Here's another thing that I didn't like. And I hope that, you know, I hope that you guys agree with me in some aspect for this one. They never, here's my thing. What did Abby expect when you go and kill somebody's father figure, somebody who, you know, even if Ellie never told her that's my father figure, you can't kill him. Even if she never said that, you could tell, Abby could tell that they had some sort of relationship. Maybe it was a father-daughter relationship similar to the one that she has. And she still goes through with it, right? And in that moment, she becomes worse than Joel. Because now she's taken somebody from someone else that they love and done it in front of them. So here's my thing. Here's a question that I pose to all of you. What did Abby expect? She's in the auditorium pointing her gun at Ellie, clearly heartbroken that her beloved has died, Owen, and, you know, all of her friends have been killed because of that, you know, because of the things that have happened. And she's pointing the gun at Ellie. What I didn't like is that she never stops to think and realize that she is the reason that all of this is happening. If you guys take a moment and think about it, yeah, you could go back further and you could be like, oh, well, Joel's the one who killed her father. So yeah, Joel's actually the one who started all of this. And so she goes and kills Joel, but she kills Joel in front of Ellie. But what did you think was going to happen? That Ellie was just going to go home? You know, she was going to go home and just be done with it and be like, oh, you know, she killed Joel. I guess we're just, you know, we're just down a man. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So like, it kind of frustrated me when she's in the auditorium being like, yeah, you done me dirty. And it's like, no, girl, you done yourself dirty. What did you, because of course you should have expected that Ellie was going to, you know, come after you. And if she couldn't get to you, she was going to go after your people. But here's the thing is like, and this was what made me so disconnected from Abby, is that Abby never has this, this humble moment, this humbling, you know, moment of realization where she realizes that she is the catalyst for her own self-destruction, similar to the way that Ellie is. Ellie's lack of happiness in the end and her complete just, you know, dissonance from her old self is because of her actions, because of the choices that she made. She had roads that she could have gone down. She continued to go down the wrong road, similar to the boat, right? You see the boat at the end of the game, and Abby's in one boat, and there's another boat that's pointing in another direction. It's like you can both get on this boat and be done and let this whole thing go. But she chooses to continue to fight. So at the, you know, and these are roads that are paved throughout the entire game. If you look at them, you see choices that are made. There's a left road and a right road, and Ellie continues to go down the right road and, go down the right road, which is the wrong road. And so you see Abby do the same thing. We're like, oh, because you killed Joel, all of your friends around you have died. And I would have just liked for her to see this realization, to have this moment where she's like, damn, I am my own worst enemy. I'm the reason that all of these people have died. Instead, she continues to point the finger at Ellie and Tommy and be like, oh, you guys killed my friends. Well, they didn't do it for fun. Like, what do you mean? They did it because of what you've done to them. And I understand what the game is trying to pose, you know, this cycle of violence. We're like, not saying necessarily surface level that violence is bad, but that this hatred, that if we hold on to hatred that we have for other people, it can be destructive. Whether we're physically going out and killing people or not, it's a destructive feeling. It's a destructive emotion that you can harbor such ill will, you know, or ill intent or resentment towards another person. Like, and at the end of the day, you're going to be left in an ocean of nothing, in an ocean of just, you're going to lose yourself. You're going to lose the people around you potentially. And it's not worth the vendetta. You know, what you see in the game is Ellie physically showcasing violence in an effort to, cope with what has happened. And I think we all do that in a way, is where we find ourselves trying to cope with, things that have happened in ways that can often be destructive. And you see this in Abby. But like I said, what I would have wanted to see is, at least not in the beginning or maybe even the middle, but at the end, realizing that, wow, this girl is hurting. Ellie is hurting because of what I've done to her, similar to how I was hurting because of what someone did to me. And I didn't expect an apology. I didn't expect Abby to be like, oh, I'm sorry for killing your father figure. But like I said, I would have just rather her have this moment of being like, man, like, I realize now that like what I'm experiencing right now is the case of what I have placed upon myself. So, those are still, in a way, those are some of the negative things that I found within the game. Some of the big negative things. There were a lot of little minutia that I found throughout the game that really, that kind of bothered me, rubbed me the wrong way, or things that I just wish I had seen differently. But I'd say that those were the biggest things. A lack of humility, a disconnect between the two main characters that I felt like could have easily been resolved had they just had a discussion, or at least Abby be like, oh, he killed my father, like that's why I killed him. And then Ellie would have been like, oh, damn, okay. That kind of sucks. And maybe they could, they could have an understanding, even if they'd still try to, kill each other, whatever. Now, in terms of WTF, one of the biggest things, like I said, I didn't like the way that they killed Joel, but I didn't understand why they killed Joel. Like, now I know, if you read a little bit about, interviews with Naughty Dog or whatever, you'll see that like why they decided to kill Joel was because of, they wanted the player to have this strong emotional reaction, right? And mission accomplished. That people did. They had even when the leaks went out, like people had a strong emotional reaction to what was inevitably going to happen. But if we look deeper at it, like we can see this kind of, I don't know, this feeling of like, why did they have to kill him like that? I think that's the thing that kind of like loses me a little bit. Did they have to kill him like that? Like I said, if they had killed him, fine. But did they have to do him like that? That's my question. And I would love to know what you guys think down in the comments below. One of the things that I would have liked to have seen, as we head into the final segment of this episode, what I would have liked to have seen. Number one, I would have liked to have seen them talk about the virus or talk about Ellie's immunity. Now, granted, I understand that, because Joel took her off of, being killed at the end of Last of Us 1, that, she feels that her life is quote unquote deemed as it doesn't matter. Well, here's the thing, and I'd love what you guys think about. I'd love to know what you guys think about this. I would have loved if they had some sort of arc, right, where, okay, Ellie feels like her life is meaningless. It doesn't mean anything, has no meaning because of what Joel did. Now, Joel has been killed, and maybe now this is her chance to find meaning in that. Even before Joel gets killed, maybe she could have been like, okay, well, I'm gonna go restart the Fireflies, or I'm gonna look for the Fireflies. I didn't understand why they never talked about the immunity. They talk about it in a flashback that happens with Joel, and they talk about it back in the theater where Ellie admits to Abby that like, oh, I'm the reason there's no cure, and it would have been such an easy moment where Abby could have been like, oh, I don't care about the cure. That's not why I killed him. I killed him because he killed my father. Wow. That would have taken 2 seconds, and they would have had this moment where like, oh man, Ellie finally understands where Abby's coming from. She can kind of understand her a little bit better, even if she decides, I'm still going to try to kill you. Okay, cool. But at least she understands. And I wish they had talked about the cure a little bit more. It would have been cool. I think another alternative, ending or an alternative, route that they could have gone down where they talk about the cure. Ellie is seeking to find her way. She's trying to find her purpose. And as a result, she goes and maybe finds another immune person. That would have been a huge plot twist. If maybe in the theater, they're having this big showdown or whatever, and you find out that Abby's immune. And she's like, oh, man, I'm immune. And then they're like, oh, well, after Abby tells Ellie that, like, my father was the only one who could come up with a cure. I've been spending all these years trying to study what he was doing. And I think I figured it out. But I need technology, or I need other help for people to find out, which is her purpose for trying to restart the Fireflies or find the Fireflies like Owen was trying to do, right? Now you have this opportunity where Ellie's like, well, I can't bring back your father, but what I can do is maybe we can try to find find a solution together, in an effort to, right some of the wrongs that have been done. And then you'd be like, oh, okay. So now they go off and find their Fireflies together. And I feel like that would have been cool. That would have been cool because it would have brought the two characters together. They could put aside their hatred, finally work together for a cause that, for Ellie, for Abby, she's honoring her father by continuing his work. And for Ellie, she's finding purpose in her life. And if at the end of the day, maybe the player chooses which one dies, maybe they choose, or something happens and one of them gets severely injured and they decide, okay, before I die, use me and make a cure. And maybe that was Ellie, and maybe that's a bit of poetic justice where she finally does the thing that she wanted to do, which is make her life mean something and be the reason why she can save the world or whatever. But that's just one area that they could have gone down. Another area that they could have gone down was maybe Ellie's being hunted. And Joel doesn't have to die at the beginning of the game. Maybe Joel dies at the end of the game or towards the end, where in an effort to save Ellie as they're trying to get her to another group of Fireflies that could potentially have a cure. Now, that might have not gone so well because it's kind of just a rehashing of the first game. You have to kind of progress the story a little bit, but I don't know. There's so many aspects that they could have gone down that I think would have been beneficial to character growth. That didn't involve Joel either dying so brutally or dying in that way. But yeah, guys, honestly, this game left me curious. Now, if we're going to talk about the end, right? I wish they had done a different ending, or perhaps maybe they had alternate endings. Maybe depending on what you did throughout the game, some of your choices, maybe the ending could be different. That's one area where they could go about showcasing different outcomes. Because the one that they gave us was pretty dark. It was pretty morbid, to have Ellie just lose everything, lose two of her fingers. She didn't get to do what she had, the thing that she had chased so heavily to do. And it just left her, even in my opinion, it left her even more broken than she was at the beginning. So at the end of the day, you put down the controller and I don't know, I didn't know how to feel. I was just sad. I was like, well, she went all this way and got nothing out of it. And Dina's gone, So who knows where Dina went? Maybe she went back to Jackson. Who knows? But I don't know. There are just so many ways where the story just didn't need to be that dark. It didn't need to be I've never felt so much emotion in a game. So mission accomplished. If that was Naughty Dog's end goal was to evoke emotion that surpasses any game that's ever been, created. Well, yeah, they got me there. But there were so many points in the game where I was I don't know what to do about this. I don't know how to feel about this. And I feel like if they had made some of those disconnects that maybe I had mentioned earlier, or made some of those connections to the two main characters, maybe I'd feel a little bit more about Abby. But honestly, at the end of the game, I didn't care whether Abby lived or died. My focus was still on Ellie. I still wanted Ellie to come out of this. I wanted her to make better choices at the end. I felt like a dad watching your daughter just do all the wrong things. You're like, can you please just listen to me? Even when she's leaving Dina, I was like, please don't do this. You're better than this. I'm better than this. But alas, it was a story that we just had to kind of go through, witness, and watch it all play out. But at the end, I felt like both Joel and Ellie, they weren't given the stories that I would have hoped for, But again, this was their story to tell. Who knows if there's going to be a Last of Us 3? I have no idea. If they continue the story playing as Ellie, or if they maybe go a different route and maybe, do more Abby. I can tell you right now, though, if they decide to do a Last of Us 3 focused on Abby, or maybe if it was focused on Abby, I don't know who would want to play it. Because, I think a lot of people, that I've talked to have been in agreement that Abby was just not she's not a great character. Like, I didn't care for her that much. I understood some of her motivations, but I didn't feel like they warranted as much damage as she was causing to herself and to the people around her. But that's my opinion, guys. I would love to know what you guys think. Jump in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. What did you think about Abby? What did you think about the choices that Ellie made throughout the story? Did you feel like she was justified in it? Did you feel like she should just let it go? Like I said, as we go through different series, on this channel, I hope that at the end of it, we can have an open discussion about these things. That's productive, respectful, and engaging, because that's why we do this. That's the purpose of this channel. I want it to be an open, welcoming environment where people can kind of come together and discuss differences and opinions and similarities that they feel like they had through this experience that we share together. So that's all I have. I could talk about this game for another hour, but I don't want this video to be too long. If you guys like the podcast style videos at the end of each series, be sure to smack that like button, subscribe if you're new here, as we'd love to have you become a part of our discussions for these games. With the new next generation coming just around the corner, there's going to be a lot of great games to play, and that means also a lot of great stories. And I hope you guys will be along for the ride with me as we go through them. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think about this game, about this series, your favorite parts, your most hated parts, and the parts that you simply just were left confused about. I'd love to hear them all. I'll be looking at the comments. Like I said, guys, we'll be jumping into the next series soon. I think we'll probably end up doing Ghost of Tsushima, which comes out a few days from the uploading of this video. So I'll probably be doing those, and I hope that you guys will be along for the ride. I'm very excited about that game as well. It'll be a nice change of pace from what we just experienced. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys like the podcast style. I'll be sure to try to do more of these in the future if you guys do enjoy them. And whatever you guys get into, I hope that you're safe, and I'll see you in the next one.